Good evening, Nigeria. Tonight, the corridors of Aso Rock tremble not from thunder or lightning, but from whispers. Whispers that speak of loyalty, denial, and the ever-burning question: who truly holds the key to Nigeria's power chessboard? First, from the heart of Abuja comes the bold declaration: no vacancy in Aso Rock. Minister of State for Housing and Urban Development, Abdullahi Yusuf Atah, fires the first shot, insisting that the North has not turned its back on Tinubu. But beneath the statement lies a story shifting alliances, quiet promises, and the political mathematics that could shape 2027 long before the ballots are printed. And just as the power game unfolds, Peter Obi speaks clearly and calmly, yet cutting through the noise: I have no agreement with Goodluck Jonathan. Now that may sound simple, but in politics, denial can sometimes be the loudest confirmation. What's behind this careful, worded distance? Is it the strategy or the survival, or simply sincerity? And finally, Senator Dino Melaye drops a bombshell: clemency. Tinubu pardons 70 drug lords. 70, a number that screams for answers, that tests the limits of justice and mercy. Is it leadership or leniency gone rogue? From denials to declarations, praise to pardons, tonight the script of power unfolds not in black and white, but in every shade of ambition. Welcome, this is Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. Join us shortly. I'm Abdullahi AI. Now, you're welcome back. Now, there's a familiar drum beat in the air again, which is the rhythm of 2027. And this week, over the weekend, it came louder and clearer. From the corridors of power, Minister of State for Housing and Urban Development, Abdullahi Yusuf Atah, didn't mince words when he declared there is no vacancy in Aso Rock. Not maybe, not possibly, he said it as a fact. But what does that really mean or truly mean politically, strategically, and symbolically? Now let's unpack it. Atah's statement comes at a time when the whispers have grown louder. Whispers that the North, that mighty voting bloc, may be reconsidering its alliances with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ahead of 2027. But the minister insists that those whispers are nothing but a pernicious campaign of falsehood and malice. Now in Nigerian politics, denial is never just a statement. It's a message. It's a signal to both loyalists and rivals that the power structure remains intact and the gates of Aso Rock are, at least for now, closed for competition, or close to competition rather. Now let's talk the numbers. Back then in 2023, President Tinubu's victory was shaped by a fragile coalition: the APC's machinery in the southwest, fragments of the northwest loyal votes, and the pockets of the middle belt's influence. If the north turns even slightly cold, that arithmetic changes dramatically. So when Minister Atah says the North has not just turned against Tinubu or will not turn against Tinubu, he's not just defending his boss, he's defending the electoral geometry here that keeps power balanced on a knife's edge. And yet, to be honest, the phrase "no vacancy in Aso Rock" is more than a line. It's a warning shot. It says to those within the APC, the restless governors, the silent godfathers, and the ambitious insiders, that succession talks is treasonous. It says to the opposition, PDP or the Labour parties, just to mention a few, that 2027 is already a closed chapter, but before the book will even be written. But history will also remind us in Nigeria that it doesn't always follow suit or follow this script. We've seen the movie before. In 2011, there was no vacancy. In 2015, there was also no vacancy. And yet, each time, power kept shifting. Because democracy, as imperfect as it is or appears, thrives on unpredictability, and because at the end of the day, no politician can declare ownership of the people's mandates before the ballot is cast. Atah's arguments rest on performance. The renewed hope agenda, he says, has delivered infrastructure and housing across the North. But let's test that optimism. If the North is indeed closing ranks, why then do we still see silent discontent, rising inflation, food insecurity, and an economy gasping for breath who is actually choking upon ascent? Politics may reward loyalty, but electorate rewards results. And for the millions of northern traders, farmers, and youth still waiting for this renewed hope agenda to reach their streets or their towns, the question is not about 2027, it's about the very essence of today. So when the minister says there's no vacancy in Aso Rock, my opinion, factually speaking, is that it truly means they are not ready to give up power. But democracy says power is never owned, it's borrowed. It's borrowed from the people and renewed only by performance. Still on 2027, in Nigerian politics, silence is rarely empty. It's usually pregnant with ambition. So when the likes of Peter Obi, the man who redefined the third force politics in 2023, walks into a closed-door meeting with former President Goodluck Jonathan, the political class holds its breath and the rumor mill will definitely explode. But this week, Obi's camp decided to draw the line through his media aide, Dr. Yunus Atanko. He said, "It's loud and clear. There is no agreement with Jonathan." Simple words, yet politically loaded. Now, let's not forget, this isn't just about a meeting. This is about meaning. In Nigeria, political tea leaves are tasted not by what is said, but why or who has been seen together, where and for how long. And when you put a reformist such as Peter Obi beside a former president whose tenure ended in political heartbreak, the symbolism becomes impossible to ignore. Was it mentorship or maneuvering, a friendly chat or a quiet alignment? Talking about why this story matters, Peter Obi remains undeniably a factor in Nigeria's 2027 arithmetic. In 2023, he pulled over 6.1 million votes, capturing Lagos, dominating the southeast, and a slice of the traditional PDP strongholds. He proved that Nigerian electorate is no longer a monolith and that the youth anger can translate into ballot box friendly reality. So when a man like that visits Goodluck Jonathan, a symbol of the old order, questions begin to arise. Is this the beginning of a strategic merger between the idealism of the obedient movement and the experience of a former chief executive? Or is it merely, as Tanko insists, a platonic conversation about the nation's future? But here's one thing. In politics, timing is never accidental. The meeting comes at a moment when the opposition space is fragmented. The Labour Party is struggling internally and the PDP also is struggling internally with its wrangling, looking for which direction to follow. Jonathan still commands some moral respect in the South-South region. Obi controls an emotional capital among the youth and of course the middle class. Put these two together, even hypothetically speaking, and you begin to see the outlines of what could become a coalition of nostalgia and new energy. Yet Obi says there's no pact or no agreement, and maybe that's the truth for now, but Nigeria's political history tells us every denial is a declaration of strategic distance, but not necessarily political impossibility. Remember, Buhari once said he's never going to run again, but he did run. Atiku once said he's going to retire, but he never retired. Politics in this country is a stage where intentions hide behind the curtains until the lights will actually come on to spotlight them on the stage. Still, Obi-Jonathan meeting offers a symbolic window into broader questions. Can Nigeria's next political realignment arise from or rise above the usual ethnic, party, or personal divides? Can experience and youth-driven reforms find common grounds? Or are we simply watching the familiar dance of old hands and new hopefuls circling their power? Dr. Tanko insists that Obi and Jonathan are only talking about how to move the nation forward. That's noble, if we may say, but Nigeria has heard that phrase before from coalitions that ended up moving politicians forward instead of moving the people forward. So yes, Peter Obi says there's no agreement, but in the theater of Nigerian politics, every denial is a signal that the season of political courtship has actually begun. You're watching Viewpoint. When we return, we're diving into a storm of controversies shaking Aso Rock. Senator Dino Melaye drops a bombshell, claiming President Tinubu granted clemency to 70 drug lords. And just as the shock settles, the ADC, the African Democratic Congress, fires back, calling the presidential pardon or clemency a national disgrace. What is mercy? What is moral failure? We'll be breaking down these facts, the fury, and the fallout when we return. This is Viewpoint. Join us shortly. You're welcome back to the show. Now, what's mercy and what's moral failure? While some call it mercy, others call it madness. And tonight, the debate burns hot. Senator Dino Melaye's explosive claim that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu pardoned 70 convicted drug lords has sparked outrage across the political spectrum. And the African Democratic Congress isn't mincing words either, branding the national clemency as a national disgrace. So the question is simple, but seismic. When does forgiveness become favoritism, and what does this say about justice, leadership, and accountability in Nigeria's highest office of the land? Now let's break it down. Mercy is a virtue of the strong, but in politics, mercy without measure can be seen as weakness. This week, Nigeria woke up to the storm, one wrapped in law, morality, and leadership. President Tinubu granted presidential clemency or pardon to 175 individuals, a gesture, we are told, meant to mark the national reflection and reconciliation. But among the 175 people, the names that have lit a fire under the nation's conscience and leading the charge is Senator Dino Melaye, with an accusation that lands like dynamite. 70 drug lords have been pardoned by President Tinubu. Melaye calls it unprecedented in world history. He says no government anywhere has ever shown such kindness to convicted drug offenders. He doesn't stop there. He fires a direct shot. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should scrap the NDLEA. This pardon makes nonsense of everything that the agency has actually stood for. Now, that's a heavy charge, and it doesn't stand alone because not long after that, the ADC, the African Democratic Congress, entered the conversation, calling the pardon a national disgrace. In their own words, this isn't actually mercy, it is an irresponsible use of power. Breaking it down, number one, President Tinubu granted clemency to 175 individuals. Secondly, among them, historical names such as Ken Saro-Wiwa and Herbert Macaulay, long dead, symbolic rehabilitations. Others included Major General Mamman Vatsa, executed under the Buhari regime, and Miriam Sanda, who murdered her husband. Now, the government says this was a gesture of humanity, of forgiveness, but critics from Melaye to the ADC, just to mention a few, says it's a disaster of judgment. So tonight we're asking, where does clemency become complicity? Beginning with the law, the Constitution gives the president power to pardon. It's legal, all right, no question about that. But power, when even legal, must also be legitimate, and legitimacy is born out of trust. When you pardon drug traffickers in a country where the NDLEA seizes tons of cocaine and meth, just to mention a few, over the year, what message are we actually sending to the officers who risk their lives in the front lines in discharge of their duties to apprehend these drug traffickers? What do you tell the families of the fallen agents who were killed during the raids? What do you tell the youth addicted to every poisonous substance or mind-bending substance these traffickers spread all over the country? You can't say don't do drugs and then turn around to say, but if you do drugs and get caught, the state might forgive you. Now, perhaps the president's team meant well. They say some of these pardoned offenders have shown remorse. They learned skills and they got reformed. But let's be honest, can a few months of remorse erase crimes that destroy entire families for years, running into decades? The ADC says some of these convicts have had less than 2 years of offenses that attract life imprisonment or even death sentences. If that's true, then what's the basis for clemency, remorse, or presidential pardons? Or is it remorse or convictions? Let's call it what it is. The decision blurs the moral lines of governance and those lines, because leadership is not just about what you do, it's about what you signal. Right now, the signal is confusion. To the NDLEA, their work doesn't count. To the judiciary, their verdicts also doesn't count. And to the people, crime should actually be rewarded with wins. Now, Dino Melaye is not exactly a quiet critic. He plays politics with theater. But even theater sometimes reveals the truth, because beneath his sarcasm lies a question every Nigerian should ask. What is the principle behind this presidential mercy? And who decides who deserves the mercy? If this clemency was meant to unite, it is divided. And if it was meant to show compassion, it has raised doubts about justice. Let's look at it further. From Buhari's human rights controversies to Jonathan's fuel subsidy ghost, every presidency leaves a footprint of morals. This one right now risks being defined by contradictions. We cannot fight corruption on Monday, declare war on drugs on Tuesday, and on Friday forgive the drug lords. That's not renewed hope agenda. This is actually, I will call it recycled hypocrisy. Mercy is noble, but mercy without justice is corruption. With a smile, and if the clemency list truly contains the names of Dino Melaye's claims, then history will remind us that it's not just about compassion, but it's been a failure of conscience. On a conclusive note, politics in Nigeria is never quiet. It's a chessboard of ambition, survival, and perception. From Aso Rock Gates firmly locked till 2027 as Minister for Works and Urban Development says no vacancy in Aso Villa, to Peter Obi distancing himself from whispers of an alliance with Goodluck Jonathan. The message: everyone already playing the long game. But while some plot the road to 2027, others are questioning the moral compass of today. Clemency for 70 drug lords, a presidential pardon branded as a national disgrace. The storm isn't just political, it's ethical. Because when mercy meets controversy, the governance we speak of walks in a very thin line. Now we all on Viewpoints, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I've been your host, Odiawa AI.